Hello, hello. So I should be live. The typical check if you can hear me. So please, if you hear me, someone can tell me in the chat if everything is alright, if I need to change something in the mic gain, so if I need to be louder or less loud. And then we can basically start. Welcome to our discussion and Q&A. So I wait for a moment until someone tells me something about the technical stuff, and then we continue. Oh, Petter, you are also here. That's great to read. Welcome, Petter. Good, check. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so yeah, no. Wait. This sounds like Ephraim just fell. So if you hear a crying baby, like last time when we had the Q&A, and there was the moment when Ephraim had to brush his teeth. So this is always a bit of a loud moment. This might also come sooner or later. So you might hear Ephraim, telling the world that brushing teeth is not his favorite moment, although now it's already much better than last time. So it gets better, and maybe in a few years he will like brushing his teeth. Good. If you have any questions or thoughts during this live stream, please let us all know in the chat, or if the chat doesn't work for you for any technical reasons, because you're listening to this on a Commodore or C64, or because you don't have a Google account, then you can also send an email to contact@josefbartz.de and contact with 2K. Yeah, and also if you have any thought, something that you want to add where you think this could be also something regarding a certain question that we talk about, if you have something to add or to ask in regard of this or whatever, just do it. Let us know. The only thing is that there is a bit of a limitation in the chat to 200 keystrokes. How do you say it? 200 things. So you cannot write long things. Yeah, but maybe, I mean, it's longer than an SMS. You can use all sorts of weird abbreviations. So I got some very, very nice questions. Some are quite difficult to answer because they are so big. Some are more easy to answer. Some are, for me, unable to answer, like it's not my expertise. But with quite a few, I feel confident to at least say something. And there's something that I wanted to start with, and it is written in German. So I will first read it out in German, and then I will translate it. Okay, so here comes the question. Manchmal suggerieren die Movement-Kultur-Rennen in Klammern, im weitesten Sinne, dass man bestimmte Ziele erreichen müsste, in Klammern, Muscle-Up, Split, Handstand etc. Ist es nicht ein falscher Ansatz, da jeder Mensch bestimmte Sachen, Einschränkungen etc. mitbringt? Wäre es nicht besser, die Vorgabe, Suggestion, etwas aufzulockern? Vielleicht ist es für den Einzelnen besser, er besucht weiter seinen Zumba-Kurs, aber fängt an, sich regelmäßig auszuhängen, oder geht weiter laufen, joggen, aber fängt an, in den Pausen zu jonglieren, oder macht weiter Yoga, aber geht im Sommer balancieren auf einer Stange. Die Frage hat sicher verschiedene Aspekte. Erstens, die Einbeziehung verschiedener Level. Zweitens, die Frage, wie radikal, Schrägstrich, fortgeschritten man in seiner Theorie, Schrägstrich, Praxis sein will, Schrägstrich, muss, Schrägstrich, kann, um in die Tiefe zu gelangen. Drittens, die Frage, für wen die Theorie, Schrägstrich, Praxis eigentlich ist. Mir geht es jedoch hauptsächlich um Punkt 1. So, my translation is, I'm translating on the go. So, sometimes the movement culture or movement cultures suggest in a wider sense that you have to reach certain goals, like muscle up, split, handstand, etc. Isn't this a wrong approach, as every human has or brings certain things and has certain limitations? Wouldn't it be better to loosening up these suggestions as maybe it is better for the certain persons to continue to go to the Zumba course and at the same time start to do some hanging, or to continue going running, but in the pauses you do some juggling, or you continue doing your yoga, and in the summer you go outside and balance on a rail. So this question has three different aspects. First one, the aspect of integrating different levels. Secondly, how radical or advanced do you have to be in your theory and practice to reach depth? And third is for whom the theory and the practice actually is. And the question is mainly about point 1, which was to integrate different levels. And I like this question, this is why I want to start with it. And the thing is that I have talked about this for several times already. So there's the video Vordenkleistung. I think this video I mention always. There's the video Vordenkleistung. Then I just had the video the Antithesis. I had the video Was ist Movement? Blah, 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 blah. And all these videos have one common theme, which is basically to take your freedom and to think for yourself. I see this suggestion, let me see how I translate this word into English, prescriptions of certain movements, also it's pretty difficult in a way, because there's so many different people that can be addressed through this idea, and because everyone is different, and because also there's no inherent value in things like a muscle up or split or handstand that you cannot also get from other things. Like there's nothing really special that only the handstand has or something like this. So there's no reason to do that instead of other things. Like you can do this, you can do something else. And this should be very clear, but we always want to have this security and know exactly what we do, what we should do. And we see there's this movement culture, and many people are posting certain things and showing certain things, and there are the leaders of this culture, or the person that invented the culture, showing different things, and then everyone picks these things up. So it's a bit of a fad thing where where things are en vogue and then are done, and then other things are en vogue, and so on and so forth. And the main problem here, I think, is to be goal orientated. So this practice, the practice of human movement or whatever it is, or physical practice. I personally use the term physical and cognitive practices. So although I'm kind of like, yeah, they are connected with the movement culture, I don't see our practice as being in that part of the movement culture because of the problems that I see there. But to be goal orientated means always that two things it means. First thing, it means that you put your happiness into the future. So when you reach this goal, you will be happy. And secondly, then you reach a goal and then you always need a new goal, because the moment you reach the goal is always the moment of what do I do now? It's the bit empty moment. And this can be problematic to build a practice in this goal-orientated sense. So I think it brings more happiness, more pleasure, more continuity to build a practice, or to work on a practice, or to do a practice where it is about the process instead of the goal. And the reason for goals are that you have something to point to, like a line where you know you're going. So it's like you go on the mountain and you know, okay, I want to go on the mountain, so I have a clear direction. But at the same time, it's not for me to reach the top of the mountain, but it's about the steps getting there as well. And then I also enjoy the top of the mountain. Then I go down, but I also enjoy the traveling down. So it is a practice, and then there are milestones that we might reach or not reach or whatever, but it's really not about that. Like, it shouldn't be about reaching certain things and thinking that if you reach them, there will be a magical thing happen. There's nothing magical in that way happening. It gives you something if you reach certain things. If you feel, okay, this was a thing I worked on, I did this, I achieved that, and now it's something that no one can ever take away from me, even if it disappears. For me, it was, for example, things like the handstand or one-arm chin-up. One-arm chin-up, for example, I cannot do at the moment, but through some hard work and trying out things, blah blah blah, I reached it, and it was very, very interesting for me. It didn't stay when I stopped focusing on it, and then I also realized, okay, I want to spend the time for other things, but no one can take away from me the experience that I went this path and I reached this goal. But in the end, what was actually very, very interesting for me is how to get there, to reach that, how to reach that, to the process to go there. And then reaching it was very, very nice because it showed me that the process was working. But then I really didn't care about losing it after again. Actually, it excites me a bit more to lose it and then figure out a different process, going there again, and so on and so forth. And I did this actually 2 or 3 times with the one-arm chin-up, that I stopped training it, lost it, and then did a different approach. So to learn how to solve these problems, to practice, to have a constant thing going on in your life where you want to work on something or just get pleasure from doing it, whatever it is. But if it's just about a goal, reaching a goal, I don't think it's very sustainable. I also want to mention that, as I said, if I'm very goal orientated, and now I think it's the teeth brushing moment. If I'm very goal orientated, then I put my happiness into the future. So the let's say exercise, or the thing to understand maybe, is that always when or the spiritual path and da 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 da. It seems to me, like from everything I saw, that happiness is always in the now. So this is something that you can just do in the moment. And then what the practice can also give you, because I don't really think that you need this practice to be happy, but what it can give you is a long-term pleasure, health, something that you value in your life, that adds to it, and I want to connect it also with one thing that I'm doing with people, and that I also made a video about. This is there's nothing to do. So this is the idea that you actually don't have to do things to realize I don't have to do anything. I can just sit here for a moment. It's not always I need to do things. And then on the other hand, I would say, yeah, a lot of things to do. A lot and lots of things to do in the world. Which can be on a small basis, you and what is immediately surrounding you or yourself, or it can be on a bigger basis about looking what's going on in the world, how can I be part of it and do some positive things in this world. So there's a lot of things to do, but at the moment, at the same time, there's also the thing that I can also just stop and do nothing, and to act also from this ability to do nothing, I think can be very, very valuable. So instead of rushing around from one thing to the next, to go into the state where you do nothing, and then to do from there, and then the doing is differently. Because often we are acting very robotically, not from, let's say, consciousness in a way. Yeah, unclear if this is the right word now, but let's use the word consciousness. Often we don't act from there, but much more robotic. We do this and this and this, and then we rush there and and we are like, we have this constant drive, and it's a very Western thing in a way, to always do and so on and so forth. There's this book from Max Weber, a sociologist, talks about that the base of capitalism is the Protestantic idea of work, that you have to work to get into heaven. And from my own experience with people that are Protestantic, I can also say they are less relaxed than people that are Catholic. Completely generalizing now. I definitely don't know enough really religious people to say anything like this. So it's a bit of a joke. But in our Western society, it is so ingrained to do things and that we need to do things. But it's not always the need. You can also just sit down and do nothing. There's one book I really like in this regard. It's called Don't Sleep, There Are Serpents by Daniel Everett. It's basically a book about linguistics. It's a book about a native tribe in the Amazonian rainforest in Brazil, and they have a very, very different language than Western languages. It works very differently. I don't want to talk too much about the book now, because that's not really what the question is about. But there are many, many implications in this book about how we live and what are different ways to live, and about our need to look into the future and to be in the future instead of being in the immediate and in the now and in the here. Good. I'm coming back to the question, actually, to the different aspects of the question. And the first one was to integrate different levels. And I think that the practice can and should be open to all sorts of levels. And I think when people go whatever they do, they go to Zumba or jogging or yoga, they're already doing something for their well-being, for their health. So I find it a bit pretentious almost to say that they need to like add something or do something different. If they run into trouble, then I would give a suggestion if I'm asked. But if someone is happy with what they do, why would I say, no, you have to do this new approach where we work very holistically and we do all sorts of things, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, to let people work at different levels and also to let people of different age work. And I have to say that I would love this to happen more. At the moment, the people that I deal with mainly are not that old. Like I don't regularly work with people above 60, for example. I have some 50-year-olds, but the main bracket is 25 to 35. Yeah, and I would like to have this more diversity. For a time also we had not so much gender diversity. We had mainly males. This has become better. The difference between the ratio between the genders, which I'm also very happy about. So it would be great to more heterogenize. Can I say it like this? The practice to involve all sorts of people. And I know also that some of the people that have learned from me, they have worked with older people, with seniors, with people that are retired. And I think there are many things there that are also very beneficial for this age. So indeed, the movement culture is suggesting a certain thing that attracts a certain age bracket, and that can be like a hurdle to enter for people from a different age, or people that have injuries or not so fit, and so on and so forth. And yeah, I think if this can be transcended, and that this approach can be less, let's say, judgmental in what you can do and what you cannot do, and less goal driven about, okay, now you reach that, then you finish, then you reach the next thing, but more just orientated on the practice, on the process, on doing, then I think it would be a more grown up way to practice this. Good. I think this actually includes also the aspect number 2 and number 3. I got another question that is very similar to this, that was about that when you're practicing in this way, in this holistic way, that the danger can be to think that you are a bit above the other more specialized people. It's actually a very old problem, like it's a philosopher's problem also. If you look at Heraclit, he was basically thinking that he's the only, everyone else is completely stupid, because he had a bit more overview about what's happening, he thought. And Plato was very similar, also with his idea of having a ruler that is a wise philosopher and blah 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 blah, all this stuff. So people with this holistic view on the things definitely can be drawn to think they somewhat have more understanding of life or of the things. And I also think it's quite tricky. Like, in a sense, indeed, there is something there. Yeah, if I practice all sorts of think we know, and what we actually know, and what we don't know. Good. Okay, give me 3-minute break so I can stream is down. stream was also down for a moment, I think. Yeah, let me know if the stream is up. I just saw that I also had some struggle here. Good, give me a short heads up if everything is okay with the stream. It's also actually good, so I can take one moment to breathe here and see how we continue. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so good. A few things I'm missing because the stream was broken for a moment. Yeah, basically what I said was that if you have this, like if you do this overview approach, this holistic approach, you're drawn to sometimes think you know more about life and so on and so forth. And actually in some occasions it can be true. In other occasions the specialist will actually know better because he sees details that you cannot see. And it's the difference between looking at the tree, looking at the whole forest, and I would always say change between looking at the tree, the whole forest, looking at the tree, and so on and so forth. Because if you only look at the forest, you will not see the details of the tree, and if you only see at the tree, you will not understand the whole forest. But this, I don't want to judge it to do either, like to do also just very specialized approach. This is what I like, the holistic approach, and I know sometimes it can feel that I'm in a situation where I have a bit better overview, and indeed sometimes this can be the case, but many times you will have not the same understanding at all of someone that is a specialist in his field. So there's no, we shouldn't think we are in a better place if we have the holistic approach. Good. The next question that I want to get to is, after you and Annika are 3 now with Ephraim, how did it change your view on movement and training? I noticed that many people that get a child are all of a sudden giving themselves up. I'm translating this from German. Maybe it's not a good translation. Are like, yeah, Selbstaufgabe. Yeah, it means if you are not taking care of yourself, but if you're taking care of someone or something else. How do you manage it to be still that active without neglecting your son? And I like this question because I'm also daily wondering about this topic. So first of all, I know there are not many people with children that are probably now listening to this. And also there are not many people in general practicing with me percentage-wise that have children. The people that are going to the intensives, some people that take online coaching, they have children, some have 2, some have 3. But in the group in Berlin, we are the only ones. So I also see why it is, because if you take online support or come to the intensives, then you can schedule it basically how it fits for you, and that this works with children. But if you have like young children, to go somewhere in the evening between 6 and 9, this is not really going to work. And so this will be very much an exception if this happens. So if you don't have children, you don't know how it is. This was the first thing that I realized. It cannot be imagined how it is. Yeah, this is the most difficult situation organization-wise that I ever experienced, and that can probably be experienced if in our situation you have a child and you're both self-employed, so you are managing your own time, and you have no security really from the state or anything like this. So yeah, you have to solve this thing. Then we have Annika and me, we have also responsibility for other people, and so on and so forth. So this is a huge thing to organize, and we want to be great parents. For me, it is very, very, very important to be the best father that I can be, to spend a lot of time with Ephraim. And definitely it's not an easy task. Like, having a child is a wonderful thing, and it's also a very, very, very difficult task. I used to train 6 to 10 hours every day, like a schedule that most Olympic athletes are not sustaining for that time, training, working the whole day, do nothing else. And now I feel this was actually more relaxed than now, because the thing with a child is that you just don't know what's happening. The night can be great, or it can not be so great. Annika didn't sleep without getting woken up at least 2 times per night for the last 400 nights. So yeah, that's a bit different from training and going to sleep and sleeping nice 8 hours, blah, 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 blah. The thing is, if you have a small child, if you're tired, the child doesn't care. So, so you need to be ready all the time. 2 o'clock in the night, 6 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock noon, doesn't matter. Yeah. And then at the same time manage around that the work with in our case has also so many different aspects: learning, practicing, training, teaching, office work, sitting on the computer doing stuff, writing, blah 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 blah. So many different things. So how do we manage this? First of all, often we are in a situation where I feel, okay, we really have to choose what to do. Actually, all the time. So we have to focus, and I use definitely all techniques that I know about focusing. I have many times talked about deep work. I use my techniques for dealing with digital items, setting up the iPhone, the computer, blah blah blah, in the right way. I use meditation, clearing the mind, focusing the mind on what I want to do. I purposefully use stops where I just stop, do nothing, which sounds counterintuitive, because if you are in time constraints, it's like, you need to do. I go the other way. I purposefully do nothing, so when I do, I can be focused. And a big change for me that I realized is now I can really feel why people are drawn to approaches that take little time, because never before I felt this 7 minutes here, 4-hour work week or something like this, 4-hour body, all these quick approaches. I never felt much connected to it because I always had unlimited time, I felt, and I could just spend the time however I wanted. That's not the case anymore. So now I really understand why someone would say, yeah, I want an approach where it's enough to train 2 times 15 minutes per week, because I just want to reap the health benefits. I don't actually care about the practice. I just want to stay healthy, and I take what works, and so on and so forth. I completely understand this approach now, which doesn't change my approach. I still believe in taking time, things need time, and so on and so forth. But there are some things where I feel, okay, here I look to not take more time than I need, or here I combine things, and so on and so forth. And with a small child, it's also changing constantly how you can use your time. Now, if I take care of Ephraim and I look away for 1 minute, something might happen. Yeah, 1 hour ago, a raw egg fell on a chair, and now the chair is full of raw egg, and blah blah blah, because I didn't look for 1 minute. So this is this time. In the beginning, it was different because Ephraim couldn't walk around and couldn't crawl, couldn't do anything. So if I look away for 1 minute, probably nothing will have happened. But he, at the same time, he needs constantly me to be there. Now I can also go out of the room, and it's okay for him, and so on and so forth. So it's constantly changing how you do it with a child, how your day will be. But definitely the big thing is to focus the work, to understand you cannot do everything. To do something, you have to decide, I do this and this I don't do, and then you end up doing live streams at 7:30 because there's no other time during the day, because this is the time when the child is in bed, and that's why you do it at 7:30 and not already at 6 or something like this. So life is adjusted to it. So it's always an adventure, and at the same time it is at the same time a lot of pleasure and fun, and the hardest and biggest thing that you can imagine. And the same person asks if I have special routines during the day that I do each day or most of the days, like a morning routine or meditation and so on and so forth. And this is also very connected to our life with Ephraim, because as I said, if you have a small child, it's so hard to have any routine, especially if you're self-employed. So, or yeah, if you're doing your own work. So I don't really have a routine that is always happening at the same time, but I have things that I try to do every day, that I want to do every day, where I want to keep the streak, where I make sure I don't miss them more than one day. And yeah, for example, one thing at the moment is meditation. Another thing is training, practicing. And these are maybe the two main things. There are maybe 1-2 other things where I'm at the moment not holding the streak. So these are the things where I can say, okay, this is happening, definitely. But it's not happening at a certain time of the day. So some mornings are like this, some mornings are like this. But what I love about mornings is that the mind is quiet, that there's nothing in the mind. So I like to do nothing in the moment, doing nothing, just waking up, sitting, doing nothing until the day starts. There are a few exercises that we do with morning, and one is this. Another thing is to wake up with a purpose, I call it. So you go out, you wait in bed until you feel now is something I really want to do. Yeah, and before you don't get up. So you don't get up as a pattern, like every day I go out of bed, blah 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 blah. But you wait in bed, you're woken up, you wait in bed on a day where you don't have any appointments in the morning, and then you go out of bed with a focus, with a clear thing to do. Yeah, there's mainly for people without children. I did this mainly before I had a child, but then I was doing it quite a bit. But I was never a person that always had a routine, like every day the same. And like this, I bridge the gap to the next question. I will read in German. Wie unterscheidet sich deine Herangehensweise, wenn du Gruppen oder Einzelne trainierst? Vor allem, wenn das Level der Menschen unterschiedlich ist, finde ich es immer schwierig, etwas zu wählen, das alle fordert, aber gleichzeitig passend ist. Wie genau überlegst du dir im Vorhinein alles, was gemacht wird, gegenüber, dass du spontan auf die Gruppe, den Schüler reagierst? Translation. How does your approach differ from teaching groups to privates? Especially when the level of the people is different, then I always find it difficult to choose something that is challenging everything and is manageable for everyone. How exactly or how exact do you think about what you will do before, or and how spontaneous are you with the group and students? So yeah, I'm in a way a very spontaneous person, and I always was when teaching. I've never really written down anything before, but that's very much me. I know people that like to plan and write down and blah 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 blah. I never did this, but I often sit and think, what will I do? And this can be very exact, that I know exactly, okay, this will be the first exercise, then this, then this, then this movement, then this sequence, then this principle, and so on and so forth. Or it can be just a theme for the class. Or sometimes I go into class, I don't know what will happen, and then it's intuitively. And I think all of this has their time and place, and all of things is very well working. So one thing is to plan, and this can produce great sessions that the intuition cannot produce, probably. And then there's the intuition, and this can create sessions that the planning cannot produce. So sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that, sometimes I plan more things of the session, sometimes less. It's very much changing. Yeah, and when I plan, it's mainly in the head. So only very, very occasionally will have 1 or 2 notes in my pocket and pull them out with things I really don't want to miss to say or to show in that session. And to adjust to different group levels in a group, this is definitely a struggle. It's not so easy. So always when you have just one person, of course it will be much more specific to that person. One measurement that I take that cannot be done with all sorts of practices is that that everyone will work specifically on what they what is their level, and this I would do in strength, handstand balancing stuff, in mobility, in all these things. I would educate the people that they know what to work on, instead of always like leading from the front. In a matter of a few sessions, I would try to get them to a point where they know, okay, this is something I need to work on for this weeks now, and then everyone can work at their level. This is one thing. Another thing is to educate the people that are more advanced to help the people that are less advanced. So the people that are more advanced help the less advanced or the new people to find what is important for them, or just showing them exercise that they should know now, they should do now, because they are not at the point yet where they have enough experience to decide what to do. So this is very much happening in our group here in Berlin, that it's not me all the time teaching everything to everyone, but people also teach each other. That's very, very important for me. As I said a few times, I approach it also that I make myself obsolete, and I like to say, hey, if I'm driving towards the class, I have a car accident and I'm dead, I would like the group to be at a place where they can just practice and continue without me. So this is what I'm trying to do. In other occasions, everyone will definitely practice together. It can be in the things that I said, but it can be in, like, yeah, we work on the floor, for example, and I show the material, and then it's more tricky to do it. So what I would do, for example, not always, but this is one approach, I would start easy, constantly get more advanced, and then at some point say, hey, this will be too advanced for some people. Please, if you're here only for 2 months, for example, please stick with the stuff before and practice it. People that are more advanced, please look at what I do now, and so on and so forth. So to separate the group again there. Other things, they don't need separation, because there everyone, even if it's leading from the front and everyone is doing the same, even there people can work at their intensity, yeah, or can add a detail or work on the beauty and the quality of the movement. And then it doesn't matter if a person is there for a day or for 3 years, because everyone will be able to work on it. So it depends on what is wanted to achieve, on what is the style of the practice, and so on and so forth. And also this will differ, yeah, and we will go through different ways. And what is important for me is also that some ways are also better to build a group feeling, and some less good. And funny enough, we recently noticed that if you do things where people sort of work by themselves, for example, strength, it's actually a very good group builder, because people have some time in between the sets. They rest for a minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes. They have some time to talk with each other. It's great, because this is creating the community. So I'm not really against talking in the class. Sometimes I will have classes where I say, hey, now it's a quiet class. Today's a quiet class, not much talking. But I've been to enough practices where there's no talking between the people and no community is created. And I think one big thing about this is the community. For me, it is so important to have people that I can share the practice with. We do it together, and this solitary practice is very important, because this is where things are happening that will not happen if you're practicing with other people. So there is a very important space for the solitary practice. And then on the other hand, practicing with other people, for me, that's the big thing also. Maybe more important, definitely more important, I would almost say, than the solitary practice. Because this will also make you stay with the practice. This will make you stick with the practice if there is a community around it. And I got a question that was about this. How do we wait, let me see question. How do you sustain a regular practice on your own that is enjoyable, productive, and fulfilling when you're struggling with it? And for me, the first thing would be always to somehow find people that are doing something similar, that are somewhat of a community. And it can be all sorts of things. Yeah? If you come from this holistic approach, and I have no one that is practicing this, okay, I accept it, but then I just practice with specialists. So I go to the climbing gym and practice there with people, or to a gymnastics gym, or to parkour, or martial arts, or some strength guys, or whatever. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It can be so many different things. And I use this approach also here in Berlin. There was a time where I felt like, besides my group, there's no one. Like, there was a time where I felt a bit, there's not so many people that do exactly this, or some people, but they're scattered. But on the other hand, it was okay for me, because then I was in a gym where people did handstands, so I did handstands with them. Or there was a gym where people were climbing and I could climb with them, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think the community aspect is so big in sustaining the practice. And for me, it's very, very important to build also a strong community in our group here in Berlin, and also to help to build somewhat of a community with the people that come here but don't live in Berlin. So that would be maybe the main thing I would say about that. Then there was a second question from the person that asked about the planning. I start with German. Meine zweite Frage betrifft die Trainingsstruktur. Wie findet man das richtige Verhältnis, richtig in Anführungszeichen, zwischen klar vorgegebenen Übungen, Sätzen, Wiederholungen, etc. und freier Exploration, Play oder einfach etwas probieren, das man nicht kann? So my second question is about the structure of the training. How do I find the right ratio between exercises / sets / repetitions, etc., and free exploration / play / trying things that you're not good at? Yeah, and my first answer is always the same. It depends. Blah 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 blah. What I do is, I don't know about the right ratio. I have no idea what is the right ratio. But what I do is I just have times, this can be weeks, months, days, whatever, where my training is more in this way of exercises, sets, reps, time, very clear, very mathematic. Boom, 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 boom. Sometimes it's so wonderful, it feels so nice to do that. And then I have time where I feel this I don't care at all about. I mainly want to improvise, play, explore, try, And this can be 50-50, but it can be also 100 to 0, changing from time to time. So I would say for this practice that we do, the right ratio is if you change the ratio. Because the only issue I saw is if people can only do one of the two. Yeah, for our practice. I don't say in general that this is an issue, but since we try to develop somewhat of a freedom and truth in this approach, and besides the pleasure, then the freedom you will gain through a combination of these two approaches. Yeah, if you only work very linear with sets and reps and blah blah blah, you never improvise, play, and so on, you will obviously not be free. You will not be able to move, let's say, yeah, to move in the chaotic situations because you don't know them. But the exercises, sets, reps, etc., are very good to work on the things that you are avoiding in the free exploration, because you're avoiding so many things automatically. It's not consciously that you avoid them necessarily, but your body avoids them because you're not so used to it, or because you're scared, etc. Yeah. So for this to do exercises, sets, etc., very clearly chosen things is the way. So this is how we do the things that we don't do in the play. And in the play, it's more complexity, everything comes together, and so on and so forth. Good. 3-minute break again. Let me know if you have anything to add, any questions, etc. So 3-minute break. Good. Yeah, as I said, if you have any other thing to add, any questions, just let me know in the chat. Do you have a similar framework for your mental practice as the one you have described for physical practice? If so, could you give a short summary? I like this question because it made me think about the map for the mental practice. I don't have a map for the mental practice, for the cognitive practice, like for the physical practice. I can only tell you what are, for me, important parts at the moment, but in the next years, I'm trying to map this more out. So one big part is awareness, and this has many different subparts, like awareness of inside things, more somatic, more awareness through the senses, like seeing and listening, etc. But also knowing things, recognizing things and patterns and forms and structures, or just having knowledge, and through this knowledge being able to see more, be more aware of things that are happening around you. So there's this connection also with the awareness. Awareness is a big part where we do several exercises. Then we have reflection, contemplation, meditation, which are all different, but there's somewhat also a connection here between the two. The different parts of meditation, different ways of meditation. A friend of mine who has a lot of meditation experience told me he thinks about meditation as three different parts, three different categories of meditation. So there are definitely different ways of meditating. There's also the sitting, the moving meditation. So there are different meditative practices that we do. Then there's the reflection, contemplation, which is so important for our practice, and which I do very regularly with people and myself. Then there's a big thing, logic. Logic can be in a mathematical way, numbers, but one big thing here is also logic in means of argumentation. And in general, there's a lot of practice with language that I do, because I think language is so interconnected with how we see the world and what we do and so on and so forth. And I always talk about I always end up talking about language in a way when there are bigger questions. And I think to have a bit better understanding of language and what it does, and also the logic of argumentation, is very, very useful. Also to just be more secure from deceptions. That's one insight into our cognitive practice. Then there are also several practices where you cannot really say they're cognitive or they're physical. Something like making music, like what would you say? Is it more physical or is it more cognitive? Because it's very, very connected. Of course, it's physical. It has a physical part. On the other hand, you can make music also on the computer. Then it's in a way not very physical. Like you don't need much physical skill. It becomes very cognitive in a way. But you see, it's not so easy say it. It's anyway only a help for mapping out the things, to say, this is more physical, this is more cognitive, blah 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 blah. It doesn't matter for me if it's this or that. It's just for helping to map out and to get some help in setting up the practice. Now there's a bit more specific question in a way, so it's not such a big question. What are your methods to develop organic strength applicable to general scenarios? You use regular strength training or special methods? It is a bit unclear for me, to be honest, to what is a general scenario? What is this? I'm not sure what a general scenario is. Does this exist? Or are all scenarios specific? So there is the strength training that is linear, and the linear strength training makes it very easy to measure. That's the reason to do this practice, to do this strength training, that it is so easy to measure. Yeah, like a pull-up or push-up, blah 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 blah. If you have clearly defined where it ends and where it starts, and the path and the time and all of this, you can measure it very clearly, and you can, through times, your progress, program your progress, and you can have great gains. So this is a great way of practicing things, to make them into exercises and movements that you can measure. But as we already said, this will not make you be able to deal with chaotic situations, because always when you make something measurable, you lose some things, because you make things more simple. And this is where this idea comes in of the organic strength, although I wouldn't say that I really use that term. I would more say specific strength. So now we have specific scenarios like fighting, and many sub-specific scenarios in fighting, or moving through the environment, or climbing, or swimming, or moving on the floor, in a maybe dance scenario, and blah 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 blah. So here we can always train specific strength. If you think about the wrestler, you can do very specific exercises for the wrestling with the partner. So you can have an organic, let's call it like this, organic strength training. It's not so easy to measure, but it could be also just to roll with someone and purposefully using more strength to develop more strength in these situations, or to climb and to purposefully climb in harder ways, or to climb routes where you need more strength, so to gain more specific strength for this specific situation. So it would be something very similar to the specific situation, but putting yourself in a situation where you need to exert strength. Very, very, very simple principle. I've talked before also somewhere, I think in overview of physical practice, that is also hard to distinct. Is there something like general, or is everything specific? Because of course a pull-up is also a specific movement. You could say it is a climbing movement because you pull yourself up, blah 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 blah. At the same time, it has a transfer to all sorts of things. So I said now there is this specific strength training, but of course if I wrestle with someone and we train our strength there in the wrestling, of course it will also translate to something like climbing. There is no transfer. Everything is translating into everything. Just some things are more, some less, and there are always the specific coordinations of the of the scenarios. Like there are different coordinations that I have in wrestling compared to climbing, blah 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 blah. So if I only train strength in wrestling, I will not be able to exert the same strength in a way, if we could measure that, let's say, on the climbing wall, because I need the specific coordination for that as well. But yeah, the thing with general and specific is always, again, a bit tricky. It is just, again, to map, to help set up the practice. Okay, there's a question about supplements, stuff like vitamin. Wait, this is not my expertise, I have to say. I do some stuff with vitamins by myself, but my expertise is not enough to talk about this topic, honestly. Like I don't want to get into it. There are some supplements I take occasionally. There's nothing I take always, but some things I take occasionally. Yeah, things like magnesium, blah 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 blah, vitamin C, and so on and so forth. But there are other resources that are much better than me. It's definitely not my expertise. Someone asked for, because I made a joke on Instagram recently about extreme book recommendations, that I could give some extreme book recommendations at some point. Someone asked about my extreme book recommendations, and then I was thinking about what are my extreme book recommendations, because it was just a joke. It's been hard to come up with a book that everyone should read or something like this. Definitely doesn't, yeah, I don't want to say that there's something like this. I recommended some books in the past, like Deep Work. One book I always like to recommend is Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. All Dostoevsky books are great. Brothers Karamazov is, from my understanding of Dostoevsky yet, which I will plan to deepen for many years. This is the fullest book, it seems to me. There's so much inside. I have learned so much from this book, from Brothers Karamazov, especially from Ivan, from the character Ivan. I've learned a lot. I love Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. I learned a lot about the mind. I really love that book. I love, one very big impact on my practice had the Tom Brown book, The Way of the Scout. This was basically what got me into the wilderness stuff. Practice all these wilderness things. The Way of the Scout by Tom Brown. It's super exciting. Super exciting book. You don't know what is really true and not, but doesn't matter. Like, yeah, it's super exciting book. Maybe that's enough of recommendations. Yeah, the people that have been to my place know there's a full bookshelf, and browsing through my Audible, there are also a lot of books. But I also don't want to say that you need to read a tremendous amount of books or something like this. But for me, it's more important that to apply knowledge from the books. So not just read and then blah blah, and then read the next thing. But what I do, I work through the books, and I make sure that if it's a good book, and I really take something with me and I learn something. So the idea of speed reading, I think, is a real nonsense. I did some speed reading. Actually, I did speed reading of a book of a person that is recommending speed reading. So I felt, yeah, okay, then I do it with your book, because I don't care about your book anyway so much. But I think speed reading is a nonsense. Like the only books where I did it, I was pretty sure there's not much in there. I just want to get an overview about what's happening here. I don't care much. Good. After I put it in the shelf, finished. My grandmother taught me also the librarian way of reading a book, which is you read a few pages in the beginning, you read a few pages in the middle, you read a few pages in the end. and that's it, then you know enough to tell someone that this is a book that you can borrow in the library. But I think if you really want to work with books, then you need to take your time with it. You need to work it through. And one method is the Zettelkasten method. My friend Sascha Fast is working with this a lot. I've recently talked about this also in a newsletter, Zettelkasten method. Sascha is working also on a way to show this to more people, I think. But you can also Google it. So I put it in the chat, Zettelkasten, and if you put Zettelkasten Sascha Fast, you will also find something. Yeah. So this this would be maybe my more extreme recommendation, to work through books instead of just reading them and thinking you're so great because you read so many books. No one cares how many books you read. What matters is, what do you take out of a book? Can you read a book and really have an impact in your life? Yeah, like people that are religious, that are very religious and are reading one book their whole life, or they have 2 or 3 or whatever, blah 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 blah, but they really absorb it and live to it. Of course, this is I'm not saying that this is good. Yeah, of course, it breeds many problems if you take this literally. Yeah, the people that read the Bible and they take it literally. What's written in the Bible? Most people don't know that there are some things there in the Bible that, if you cannot take it literally because it's just against the law, like hitting your children and all of this is all written in the Bible, so you cannot take it literally anymore today. But still, there is can be a lot of wisdom in these books, So if, let's say, you have only one book, it's the Bible. Actually, Dostoevsky had this situation when he was in Siberia, because he was kind of like a revoltist and almost killed, but then they decide, no, you will just go to Siberia for the next 10 years, or I don't know how much anymore, work there in a camp, some sort of a gulag, and he had only one book, which was the Bible, and it's clear that he took a lot out of it. So maybe you just need one book, but really work it through. But of course, then it should be the right book, and maybe, be sure to not take everything too literally, if it's something like the Bible. So good. I think we are at a good point. I also got asked about nutrition, diet, and maybe this is the last thing I talk about. Nothing else pops up, and I just want to say that I think diet, nutrition is very specific to the people and to time. I don't think there is a diet that is staying for people. And I've met enough people that were so into their diet and like telling everyone, oh, this is the best diet, everyone has to do it, blah 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 blah, and then 2 years later they eat very differently. So it changes through time. It helps to be aware of it, to have some mindfulness about what you eat and what not. I think there are some general principles that are beneficial for everyone in a way, which are written down in the book Food Rules by Michael Pollan. And one is, for example, don't buy anything with an ingredient that you don't know how to pronounce, or with an ingredient that your grandmother wouldn't recognize, or that you wouldn't have in your shelf for cooking. Yeah, there's a great advice because it gets you rid of the processed too much processed foods. Another great advice is to not buy, or I would say to be cautious, to not buy foods where sugar is in the first 3 ingredients. The ingredients are always a hierarchy. And another great one is not buy any food that has more than 5 ingredients. I like that. That's like 3 rules that are very, very simple, and this will already, make sure we are at a point much better than what's regularly happening in our society with people that are not so concerned. And I think one main thing is to cook. If people cook, generally they eat much better than people that don't cook. I was once at home, the person, and I looked into his fridge and there was nothing. And he said, we never have anything in the fridge, we always go out to eat. It was the strangest thing for me, because I think there's so much in cooking involved. It's such a great practice, and for me it's weird, I have to say. Like, I understand like rationally, but emotionally it's somehow weird for me. Like the whole generation of males that cannot cook, that always went to work and they came home and their wife had cooked for them. Weird. I think if we cook, our diets will be already much better than if we don't cook. And then the detailed thing is to take some things out, put them in again at some point, see how you feel. And then for some people it's vegetarian, for some it's more paleo, for some it doesn't matter much, or it changes all the time, or it's Ayurveda, or it's tropical seafood mixed diet, or I don't know. Like, it's so individual, and all the fights about diet, like eat this and this is the right thing to eat, blah blah blah. This is idiotic, because if you just observe, you see some people are happy with this, some with that. So it's an individual thing, testing out, trying. And there are so many aspects. There's the social aspect, there's the health aspect, there's the pleasure aspect, blah 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 blah. Good. Okie dokie. We have 8:57, so my usual 90-minute time caps, we keep them going like this. Thank you very much for listening. We talked about many different things, completely like in all sort of directions. Yeah, one main thing I always talk about is, in a way, reason, to not be drawn to superlatives. This is the best, this is how you do it, blah blah blah. But reason, some like this, some like that. Understanding the ambivalence of things. It has this side and it has this side. Both sides are true. Deal with that. But we always want to get rid of the ambivalence. This is what we always want to do. We want to get rid of the ambivalence. But we are not achieving this, because it's always there. There's nothing to do. There's a lot to do. That's the ambivalence. Yeah? So internet is terrible and it's great at the same time. That's the ambivalence of the thing. It's now I'm starting to make jokes. Like, it's weird that I'm talking here in a room with no one in front of me, and then it's great. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so before I start to talk nonsense, I would say have a good night, everyone, and make sure you don't eat anything with more than 5 ingredients, and that you practice not goal orientated but process orientated, and that you, what else? What else? And something. And that you process books through. Yeah. So summed up the whole talk here. All right. See you at a different point. There will be the next one will be around in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The next live stream. So see you then, or see you at training, or see you in the forest. Goodbye. Ciao, ciao.